Once again, welcome to the Wednesday webinar about boundary systems. This week's topic will be Creo Advanced Framework Extension. My name is Michael Wimberly, and I will be conducting the webinar. All right, so the overall agenda for today is once again going through an introduction of boundary systems, an overview of the topic, and then of course a demonstration of the actual topic being Creo Advanced Framework Extension. Once that is completed, then we'll have a Q&A at the end of it. So the first thing is myself. My name is Michael Wimberly. I am a technical specialist here at Boundary Systems. I have over 25 years of experience with PTC products. I've been training PTC products for over 20 years. I am certified to train Creo classes as well as Windchill classes, as well as being certified to implement Windchill as well. As far as Boundary Systems, first off, Boundary Systems is headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, but we have presence globally. Some of our partners include, of course, PTC, Solid Thinking, eTraj, Autodesk, and other technology companies. That's why we consider ourselves to be a technology leader in the industry. We've been the 16th fastest growing company in the greater Cleveland area, and we are also a part of the PDSVISION group, which once again helps us to be a global-based company. Some of our capabilities are product lifecycle management, data management, CAD design and consulting, simulation, as well as product development. Now, our mission here at Boundary Systems, first off, is to have the most technical expertise of PTC products of any company in the world. So what we have is we have a lot of technical people that have expertise in a lot of different areas. So we don't consider ourselves to be expert in every area as far as an individual wise, but with our entire team, we consider ourselves to be experts in all of the different fields inside of relating to PTC products. We also drive to understand the needs of our customers. And with that understanding, basically that's how we go through and recommend what you should go in and purchase, what you should go in and implement. So by having conversations with you, then we understand what you need and we recommend what is necessary. Now, by doing that, by having a conversation and recommending what we feel you need, then we go in and we guarantee the success of every solution, because we're not giving you something that we don't feel you're going to use. We're going to give you something that we feel is going to help your business, help you go through and be better at what you're doing or faster at what you're doing, which is once again down the last bullet item is we want to go in and decrease costs, decrease time to market, but also at the same time increase the quality. So we'll help implement better systems of doing things, better techniques of doing things, faster techniques, things like that that we can go through and help you implement, once again, whether it be additional software or whether we go in and have lunch and learns, recommended training, whatever it may be that we need to come in and do for you. All right, so some of our solutions that we offer, once again, there's a PTC suite of products. We also have Tecton, Modex, which basically is for mode analysis, Xformation for licensing analysis, which allows you to go through and see what licenses are being used, how often, how many you have, what's the percentage of those being used on a regular basis. So you can go through and kind of look at that as well. eTraj allows us to go through and export information out of Windchill for the plotting, printing, whatever it may be, to put it in a directory or a drive somewhere outside of Windchill. That's just one of the applications that we use it for. ITI kind of allows us to, or we work with them to allow us to go in and create basically kind of a bridge. So if you want two pieces of software to talk to each other that don't necessarily talk to each other, ITI is the company that can make them talk to each other. ZWCAD, if you're currently using AutoCAD, ZWCAD is a great alternative, has all the same functionality as AutoCAD, but a much cheaper price. KeyShot for rendering, SigMaxim for things like SmartAssembly, and then Cimerix as well for our softwares. Now, if you have any questions, once again, you can contact me directly, especially any technical specific questions. Contact me at mwimberly@boundarysys.com. or if you have any sales related questions, you can contact sales@boundarysys.com. Also, feel free to visit our website for any upcoming training classes, webinars that we're having, hands-on workshops that we may be having, or just general information about us, any of the softwares that we've just mentioned on the previous slides. Any of that information you can go through and find on our website, as well as visit our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel has all of the information as far as our webinars that we conduct. So every webinar that we conduct, we put on our YouTube channel. So when you go into YouTube, search for Boundary Systems, go to our page, subscribe to the page. That way, any new webinars that we put up, you'll get notified of. But once again, you'll see webinars that we've done over the last few years in our YouTube page as well. So definitely subscribe to that or look it up as well. I will have this information up after I do the demonstration as well. So if you didn't write it down, it'll be up a little bit later. All right, so the topic overview. Once again, we're simply going to go through and review Creo Advanced Framework Extension, and then of course do a demonstration of it. All right, so the first thing, Creo Advanced Framework Extension is an integral part of the Creo product family that provides better accuracy and productivity for design structural framework. So when you go through and do a bunch of the different frames, I-beams, it could be circular beams, it could be rectangular beams, square beams, whatever it may be, L channels, all those things, we can go through and much easier, much quicker go through and create those inside of Framework Extension. It supports the top-down design methodology where you're creating a skeleton framework before attaching the beams to it. So just like if you're not familiar with top-down design methodology, you're basically creating a framework of curves. If you're using skeletons, you'll also use surfaces, things like that. You can do that same basic information here for Framework Extension by simply going in and creating the skeleton of what you want your structure to look like. So we create a bunch of curves. You can do them in a single sketch. You can do them in multiple sketches, however you're going to do it. But if you're doing things on a single plane, as you're selecting them, it will pick one curve at a time. So you can go through and once again, use that top-down methodology of simply creating the framework as necessary. Now, it does also allow you to go through and create the sketches on the fly as well if you don't have the actual framework there, but you can create it up front and then simply select the curves to attach the beams to. And with that, you can produce a BOM with all the beam sizes that are also being used, that are being used for ordering. So basically, when we can go through and once we create that structure, we can go through and create a BOM that actually tells us all the different sizes. We'll see that in demonstration as well. And it also, the software actually comes with some standard tables that you can go through and use that will allow you to go in and produce that information. There's a huge library of standard beam sections, connections, joints, ladders, stairs, all kinds of things inside of here. I'll just kind of show you some of those while we're going through it, but I'm going to use specific ones. But there's a huge library of information that is available inside of here as well. And of course, what you'll see is it's very easy to learn. It's not complex. If you've worked with beams and structures and things like that, then you'll know the sizes that you want, the materials that you want. Now it's just a matter of creating a framework and attaching them to it. So let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up this assembly that I have. Now this assembly I've already started just for demonstration purposes, so it already has my framework inside of it. So it already has the curves that I'm going to go through and use for this. Now, once again, by doing this, I've also already started what we call a project. So in Framework, it actually allows you to create new projects. Also, as you're creating a framework, you can also go through and create new subassemblies. So as you're going and creating them, so if there are certain components that are going to be a part of a subassembly, you can still create them at this level, but they will be saved off as a separate subassembly. So a lot of that can be done, once again, directly inside of here. So once again, I've already started my project, and now I'm just ready to go through and start adding my actual beams. So to do that, I'll go into my profiles area, and there's a new profiles. I'll come over here and select it. Inside of here will be the library. So what you will see is you'll see standard beams, steel beams for millimeters and inches. You'll see things for sheet metal. Once again, millimeter and inches. Then you'll also see different shapes by different companies. So you can see the different beams that are available inside of here. So as you can see, there's quite a few that can be used. So different companies, depending on what you want to go through and use or which company you go through and purchase them from, it has all their standard information inside of here as well. So for what we're going to do, we're going to go in and start off with our standard beams. Now I'm going to go through and develop the legs of this first. So mine are going to be in inches, and I'm going to go in and use pipes as the actual beam size, or sorry, the beam cross section. So for this one, I'm going to go through and make this 12 3/4 by a 1/4 inch wall, and that's what the dimensions are here. It shows me that the overall outside diameter is 12 3/4, and the wall thickness is 1/4. Great. Going to select OK. Now at this point, remember I talked about going in and creating sub-assemblies. If I wanted to go through and now add this as a separate sub-assembly, that's what this option allows me to do here. It allows me to go through and now add this into a new sub-assembly, so it's not in my top level assembly. For this, I'm going to put everything at the same level, so I'm not going to go through and create any new sub-assemblies. And then I'll just come over here and select on next. This is the default material. You can go through and create your own material files, and they'll be listed down here for you to go through and use. All right, so I'll go ahead and select next, since all that is defined. And now here's where we simply go through and select the options. So this is the size that I'm doing. This is what I'm referencing, which is going to simply be a regular curve. And it simply wants to know which curve I'm going to go and attach it to. I'm going to select on that curve, and there it is. It's that simple. Excuse me. Now, with this, I want to go through and now place this shape again. So I can come over here and select repeat. It places that one, and now I can go through and place another one. Repeat again. And then repeat again. So now there are my 4 legs that I've gone through and defined for this particular item. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and select OK. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and define the frame that is going to sit on top of these legs. So to do that, I'm going to go back up in here to the section type, and this time is going to be a rectangle. And with this rectangle, I'm going to come down to where'd it go? 1210 by 3/4 wall thickness. Perfect. Once again, there's the information. It's allowed me to go in and create sub-assembly. Once again, I'm just going to go ahead and leave all the defaults for this. Select next. Now it just wants to know what curve I want to attach it to. I'm going to go ahead and attach it to this curve. There's that one. Great. Repeat. Now, because this is highlighted as a selection, if I hit the middle mouse button, it will automatically go ahead and do the repeat. And then that way I can just select that middle mouse button, select that one, middle mouse button, and select that one. Now with this one, I can middle mouse button, but for this, I'm going to go ahead and select OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Now, inside of here, when we were placing it, and I'll show you that as well when I place something else. But let's say that this was not in the right orientation, or it wasn't in the right location with respect to the curve. So by default, when it goes in and places your section, it places it basically the cross section at the center on that curve. So if I want to go through and change that, in my profiles area, there's an option for move. I'll come over and select move, and I'll select on the structure that I want to go through and manipulate. Now it goes in the highlight set, and this box is similar to what we saw when we were actually placing it. So inside of here, I have the ability to go through and rotate it. So I can go through and rotate it 90 degrees. So you can see now, instead of it being 12 up, it's now 10 up. And I can continue to go through and rotate it. Of course, it'll rotate it all the way back around until I get it to where I want it again. There's also the option of just simply doing a reset. to go through and reset that. All right. So once again, from here, as I mentioned before, we can go through and locate, we can rotate it around, we can reset it. Now, once again, by default, when it goes through and attaches it, attaches the center cross section of your beam to the actual edge itself or the curve that you're selecting. We can go through and change that so that we're now positioning the top left corner with respect to the curve, or once again, we're putting it on the center, on the right side, or any of those. So we can go through and completely reposition that based on, once again, where we want to locate it with respect to the curve. So although the curve is centered, we can go through and move our section anywhere around there. All right, so once again, I'll reset that. All right, and go ahead and cancel just to get out of that. We're not moving it. All right, let me come over once again and verify this. That is correct. Okay, so what we have going on as well is simply now we have everything intersecting in this section here. So now what we want to do, we want to go through and be able to, of course, to go in and change those locations. So what we're going to do is go in and now define the joints associated with those. So we have basic joints and we have advanced joints. Right now we're going to deal with just the basic ones. And what we have is simply how we want to go through and connect the beams together. So we have where we're creating a joint between them, or once again, positioning one with respect to the other. For example, we have this vertical circular beam here that we want to go through and locate at the bottom of this beam. So to do that, we're going to come over here and where it says join one profile into the profile. We're going to go through and select on that. I'm going to select on this to be on the bottom of that one. And what it does, it goes in and moves it. Now, what it does, it doesn't actually move it, it reduces the size of it. So the bottom of it is still at the end here, it just reduced the size. So basically it chopped it off. So it was at the bottom of that particular beam. Now with that, once again, because it is still set at repeat, I can middle click and go around and do the same thing. Pick that to there. Sorry, pick that to the bottom of that one. And pick that to the bottom of that one. Great. Now I'll go ahead, I'll hit repeat again, but I'm not repeating this function. The repeat itself, sorry, is for the repeat of the actual command, but at any point in time, I can change what it's doing. So for this one, I want to go through and change how I'm going to basically connect these two parts here. It looks rotated. So before I do that, this one looks like it's rotated. So I'll need to go through and move this. That looks better. All right. So now I'll come back once again to my basic joints. And now I'm going to go through and specify that one is going to butt up against the other. So I'll go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to specify this is my first one. That one is going to get extended. This one is going to get shortened. And that's what we see there. Now at the same time, because these are still active, I can go in and change, instead of it doing that way, I want to go through and create the separation between them two. So wherever they meet, it's where it's going to stop. I can also go through and have it create an additional piece at that intersection, or I can come over and simply do a miter at that location. All right, so once again, I want to miter that corner. So I'll go ahead and once again repeat, because I'm going to miter all the rest of the corners. And there we have it. So now we've gone through and created all the different joints in those locations. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and add additional beams. So now we're going to go in and create cross beams here. So I'm going to go in once again to the new profile, change the actual profile shape. This time I'm going to go in and use an I-beam. And these deal with the different ratios as far as the relationship of the thickness to the overall height of the beams. So we're just going to use a standard one. I'm going to come down to 10 by 12. So what that is, once again, it's saying 10 by 12, but the overall height of that is just under 10, and the overall length of that is 4. All right. So once again, I'll go ahead and select OK. And then all the defaults, and I'm going to go ahead and attach that here. Perfect. Once again, repeat. I'm going to place this one here. Repeat again. Now I'm going to use those same ones. I'm going to place them across. Now with that, once again, you can see that it is laying it flat. I do want that to be rotated, so I'm going to go ahead and rotate that 90 degrees. Repeat. And I'm going to go ahead and place one here and rotate that 90 degrees. And then for this one, I'm going to say OK. Now, in placing these beams, one of the things that I do want to draw your attention to is in the model tree. So as we place the beams, each one of the beams that I've placed is going to have a different overall part number. So for this beam here, that's this one. So it shows the beam and it's basically underscore 91. The one that's just like it next to it is labeled as 92. So when we are looking at our bombs, and what you'll see on the drawing is we'll actually have 2 different bombs. We'll have one based on the size of the beams. We'll have another one based on the actual part numbers. And I'll show you both of those when I do the drawing. But what we want to do is, instead of going in and seeing, yes, the structure bomb will show the right quantities, everything, but also in our regular part number bomb, we still want to show that these are the same. So I've already have this one in there. So I'm going to take this one and basically redo it. So I'm going to come over here, and instead of going in and doing a new profile, there's the option of reuse. So I'm going to go ahead and select reuse, and the beam that I'm going to reuse is going to be this beam here. Once again, next, and I'm going to reuse it there. And of course, I need to rotate it. So it's not like doing a pattern where it's going to keep the orientation. It's still going to place it in the same orientation as the original beam was. So I'll still rotate each one of them like so. I didn't rotate it.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
There we go. All right, so there are the beams. Now, the next thing I want to go through and configure is the beams are there, and we want to go through and create brackets as far as to attach them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. So I have the cross beams that I've gone and defined. Now I want to go through and create the connectors between there. So I'll come back to the joints in just a moment. I'll go ahead and do the connectors. So with the connectors, the same type of thing. There are multiple types of connectors that can be used. So you can see there's an expansive library based on customers and the other types that you're looking for. So there are a lot of different ones that can be used as far as locating these. So I'm going to go in for what we're going to do. I'm going to go into my inch connectors. I'm going to use my my double angle connector. So I'm going to put a bracket on either side of this brace. Great, that's good. Now it wants to go through and ask me placement for it. So I'm going to go in for the profile side. It's looking, and it tells you what it's looking for reference wise. The profile side is the side of the actual beam. So that's my selection number 1, which is here. And then for my selection number 2, which is the profile type, that's going to be up here. And then my section number 3 is going to be the attachment face, which is what it's actually attached to, which is there. All right. Then from here, we now can go through and define the size. So as you can see here, here are all the different values that are associated with placing it. For example, the distance from the end of the bracket to the first hole and the spacing between the hole, and then the spacing of the last hole to the end of the bracket. So that's our L1, L2, and L3 that we have there. Down here are the actual sizes that we're going to go through and define. So for this one, I'm going to go in and use my L4 by 3 by a half. I'm going to go in and use a 3/4 bolt, and I'm going to go through and tell it to create 3 bolts. Now I want to see what this looks like, so I'm going to go ahead and preview, and there it is. So there's that. Now as you look at it, we can actually see that this bracket seems to be a little bit long, where it's actually selecting or hitting the actual radius. So what we can do very simply is go in and change that, and I'm going to change the spacing between the holes, because once again, that's also going to reduce the overall size of the bracket. So when I do that, we'll see the bracket reduce size, and now it misses that radius. Now what it's also doing is it's also going in and cutting holes in this bracket for us to attach or to mount the bolts to. So when it goes in and places the bracket, it also goes through and creates the holes as well. So we can see it as we're going in and looking on there. Great, great, great. So I'll come over and say okay on that. And now I want to go through and place another one. So I'm going to say next again. And then the same thing, this side, this top, and then this face. And I'm going to use the same size again. 3/4, 3 holes, and we know for it to fit properly, we have to change the spacing to 2.5. All right, so once again, I'll preview it. Now you'll see something a little bit different here that you didn't see here. If you notice, not just on this beam, but on the subsequent beams after it, the holes are also there. Once again, the reason being is because we basically said this is the same part. So in our model tree, those are actually all 92s. So whenever I put holes in this one, it automatically propagates the holes to the subsequent beams, because once again, it is the same one. Great. I'll come over and select OK. And then I'll go ahead and close this, because what I can do is what I've done with the beams, because these are going to be the same ones. I can come over in here and simply say reuse again, select that to reuse, next, and then all it's going to require me to do is going to select the references. And then for the last one. And then they are. Now, of course, I can come over and do the same thing on that other side, but you get the gist of it as far as what you're able to go in and do. The other thing that I'm going to do is we can see even right here that this beam is overlapping that beam. So we can come over here and do our basic joints. But with our basic joints, it's actually using a planar cut. So it's basically going in and cutting it straight down. Well, what we actually want this to do is we want to basically contour it to the shape of this I-beam. So instead of doing a basic joint, we're going to go through an advanced joint. And what we're going to use is a cutout method. With that cutout method, we're going to go through and select the model that we want to cut out, which is this original model here. And what do we want to go through and cut it out with respect to? This model here. And you'll see now that it cuts that there, but it also leaves that geometry inside of here. So it cuts the flanges here, but leaves the geometry on the inside. I'll do a repeat, and I'll do the same thing up here. I'm going to cut this one with respect to that. Now, once again, because these are the same part, when I do this one, all the other ones automatically update as well. So they're overlapping and everything is now removed as well. So I'll go ahead and select OK. And now there's that. And once again, we can do the same thing on the other side. So we can go in and add the brackets on the other side, go in and trim everything back as well. So all that is, we can still do that on the opposite side. But once again, just for time's sake, we're going to go ahead and just continue on. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to go through and add the supports here. So to do that, I'm once again going to come over to my profile, and this is going to be a circular profile again. So I'm going to use the pipe. And for this one, we're going to use 6 5/8 by 0.134. Great. Select it. And now I want to put one here. And once again, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to come over and say OK for this, because once again, everything that we've kind of been doing up to this point, we've been doing the repeat on. I'm sorry, the reuse on. So I'm going to do that same thing for this. So I'm going to go ahead into my profile, reuse, select to reuse that, and I'm going to go in and reuse that one onto here. Great. I'm going to come over and reuse it onto here. Great. And I'm going to reuse it onto here. Okay. All right. So now remember, just like up here, anything I do to this is going to go in and update on all the other ones. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go through and trim this back, or basically join it to that surface there. So I can use a basic joint here, and I'm going to go in and once again connect them. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. I want this to be trimmed back to there. Great. Now, they've all done it. Now, if you look at these, it did trim them. But if you look at these here, it's showing that cutout on that side. It looks kind of weird. Now, the reason being is if I come over here and I select move, and I select on my original one, you see my arrow direction. So my arrow direction is pointing along the axis and is pointing up. If I select on this one, it's still pointing up the axis, but it's actually pointing down. So it's actually off 180 degrees. So what do? Is I rotate it 180 degrees. And now it takes that and it now makes it flat the way it's supposed to, just like that one. Repeat that on here. So when you're copying it or reusing it, it is important to pay attention to the arrow directions, especially if you're going in and rotating it like I did there. So I went from, if they were all on the same side, like I didn't have an issue with this one because they're all on the same side, but I moved that one around 180 degrees, which now changed where its profile was. So I have all that there as well. Now I can also come over here and trim this back, but because this is not a planar surface, I'm not using my basic joints, I'm using my advanced joints. And then once again, I can go in and do my cutout, or I'm going to cut this out around there. And once again, that will be the same for all of those. You can see that little cutout line there now. All right, so there we have that assembly currently, or that structure currently. So now what we want to go in and do is we want to go through and now show this in a BOM. So I'm going to come over here and create a new BOM. I'm sorry, a new drawing. Now with this, I have the ability to go through and copy the same name of this file to the actual drawing name. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am going to go in and deselect default template because I have a specific template that I'm going to use. So I'm going to come over here and say use template, and the template that I'm going to use is in my directory, like so. And then I'll come over and select it. And now what we'll see is we now see our drawing. So this is the drawing that we have for this structure. So as I mentioned before, we have two bombs. So we have a bomb at the top, which are the actual sizes of everything. So if I zoom in on that, you can see that it's calling out a pipe, and the pipe size is 12¼ by 1/4 thick by 144 long. So it shows me the length of each one of them is 144. There's a total of 4 of them, and the total overall length of everything is 38 feet, and then so on and so forth. So what it's doing is it's now categorizing each one of those items into our actual orderable bomb. So these are the actual items that we need a pipe that's this big by this many feet. We need another pipe that's this big. We need a structural tube. There's a value, looks like this overlapping there. So I'm going to come over here and increase the width of that table size. So we can actually see everything. So you can see once again, there's the actual tubes and then the additional shapes that we've gone in and added as well. And once again, so it takes everything, it shows the true sizes, it shows the length of each individual item because we've duplicated them. So that's why it's going in like these are showing those tubes there. There's 2 and 2. So one of them's that length, the other one's that length. And once again, it's showing the total in feet, how much we need. All right. And then from there, we also have the bomb down here in the bottom right. And this bomb is now a part number based bomb. So remember I mentioned the different part numbers that we have, where we have the 92 and there were multiple versions of 92. So if we come over here and find 92, we can see there's a quantity of 4. 91, although it's the same one, is simply at a quantity of 1. So that's now we can go in and start to reuse things. If they are the true same parts, then once we place one of them, we can come over and simply go in and do a reuse and now reuse that same part. So now, once again, our ordering somewhat lines up with our structures here. Now, one of the things that we can go in and do as well is I'm going to go through and show the balloons for both bombs. So inside of my table area, I'm going to tell it to create the bomb by view. It wants to know which bomb, so I'm going to select this table, and I want to show those balloons in this view. So now it'll show those individual ones inside of this view here. I want to do the same thing. I'm going to go and say create balloons by view. This time I'm going to do this bomb, and I'm going to do that one in this view. And it'll go through and now populate those as well. All right, so each one of those can be set up inside of here. So now this image relates to that bomb and this image relates to that bomb. Of course, we can clean them up, move them around however we want to. Once again, this is just more for visualization. And once again, this is a live bomb, which means if I come back in here and I come back up and I want to go in and change this overall height, I'm going to change this height from being 120 to 80. Regenerate everything. Everything will be the same except for the overall length of those. So when I go back to my drawing and it updates, we can now see that piping, it's now changed. So the overall length of those that I need has now changed overall. So, all right, so that's just your basic information that we have inside of here as well. I do want to show you a few other things before I end the webinar. So let's go back into here And what I want to do is this is going to be a platform that somebody actually going to need to get on top of. So to do that, I'm going to give them access. What I'm going to do is go in and create a ladder on the side of here. Creating a ladder is pretty simple. So I'm going to come up here to a new component. I'm sorry, new equipment. Sorry. And here are the different types of equipment I can go through and add. So I have stairs, rails, ladders, as well as end plates, multiple plates there. And once again, you get into the different vendor information. You can now go in and see there's the feet that we can go through and add. We have T-bolts that we can go through and add as well. So there's a lot of information, once again, based on the vendors that you're going to go through and select to go through and now add that information. All right, so what I'm going to do is, once again, underneath my inch, the first thing I'm going to do is go in and add a plate. What I'm going to do is go in and add an end plate to the bottom of this. And all I'm simply doing is, once again, that's the profile. It wants to know what am I going to associate it with. I'm going to associate it here. And I'm going to simply make it a thickness of 1. There it is. Now, same thing, if I'm looking for part numbers, because they're all going to be the same, then I will come over here and close this. And I will come over and select reuse. Select that component to reuse. Next. Same thing. There it is. Okay. Next. There. Perfect. And then the last one here. And now there's those 4 caps on the bottom. So now I'm going to go ahead and add that ladder that I was referring to. So I'm going to come back over here. Go back over to ladders. Now there's a ladder and there's a cage for the ladder. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the ladder right now. Now in placing the ladder, once again, if you look at the illustrations they have, they want to know how you're going to go through and place it. So it wants to know where's the bottom plane. So basically, where's the floor? So I'm going to go in and select this as the bottom. Then it wants to know where's the top. I'm going to go ahead and pick on the top of this beam. Then it wants to know the attachment plane. So where is the ladder going to be attached to? I'm going to pick this thin face here. And then the center plane. So I'm going to pick this plane going down the middle. Turn my datum planes back off. And there's the ladder. So what it wants to know right now is the beam size. What it wants to know is basically this size here that we're going in and using. So what is that thickness? I'm going to go ahead and make it 1 by 3 quarters. And then the thread size is basically the actual size of the steps. So I'm going to go ahead and make that there. And then once again, I can go in and select preview. And there's a ladder. Once again, pretty simple, not a lot, just simply read. You can just read the prompts and it tells you everything that you need to know. Now, what you're also looking at here is the placement of it. And here are all the different values. So one of the values that is currently set to 8 is the distance from the actual placement surface. So right now that's set to 8. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to 0, actually to 7/8. Because once again, it moves everything based on the center. So I'm going to go in and give it basically half of that thickness. I think I made it 1 3/4. If not, I can adjust that. So you have that. You also have the overall distance for the actual steps themselves, as well as the overall width of the ladder. So the width is currently 20. I'm going to go in and reduce that down to 15. And then once again, I can preview it. Oh, sorry. One other thing that is in there is this left to right offset. So right now it is placing it directly centered on that plane that I selected. This left to right offset will allow me to go through and move it to either side. So I don't have to go in and create a plane where I want that to be. I can go in and simply give it an offset value, and I'm going to make it 20 for the offset. Preview, you'll see that it shifts it, and it goes in and it attaches it to the actual geometry. So there's the ladder. Great, complete that. Now, on the other side, instead of doing a ladder, I'm actually going to do stairs. So I'm going to come over here and do stairs, like so. And then once again, all I'm looking at is the prompts that it wants me to go through and select. Once again, the bottom plane. I'm going to go in and select on that datum plane. The top plane, once again, being this top plane here. The attachment plane being this face here. The center plane being the datum plane going down the middle. And then the attachment plane, which is basically the distance that is going to come off from here. I'm going to pick this face here. All right, and there it is. So now we simply go through and specify the size. Once again, I'm specifying the beam size. So I'm going to do 12 by 25. The tread size, so basically the size of the steps. And then once again, I'm going to preview that. And what you will see are the steps. Sorry, let me turn these things off. Now, that's not exactly the way I want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and make a few adjustments to it. One of them is that this is basically, it's not steep enough because I want it to go more straight up. I don't need it to be sticking out as far. So that is based on the angle. So I'm going to go in and change the angle of the stairs to 60. Preview that. And then you'll see the angle of those change as well. There we go. So now it's a little bit better as far as what I want to go through and see at this point. So I'll go ahead and select OK to go in and finalize it. And there's that. Now I'll go ahead and close this out. And once again, just like everything else, this updates automatically. So when I come over here and I decide I want to go through and modify these values, I'm going to make that 150. And I regenerate everything. We'll see all the beams updates. We'll see the ladder update. We'll see the stairs update. So everything will increase appropriately. Now, because somebody is going to be walking on this, so we kind of want to go in and give them a little bit of protection. So while they're up top. So I'm going to go into my new equipment again. And this time I'm going to go through and define rails. Now, the difference between these two is whether or not the rail is using an L beam or it's using an actual circular tube pipe. So I'm going to go ahead and use a pipe. And then the same thing, top plane. I'm going to put that one here. It wants to know what the front plane is, which is going to be here. The left plane is given it the left extent. The right plane is given it the right extent. And then the floor for this one, the actual top plane and the floor are the same. And now just for quickness, I'm just going to go through for the size. I'm going to use the top for each one of them. So it wants the handrail diameter. It wants the knee rail, which is this one here. Then it wants the foot rail, the size of that. And then it wants the actual post size. So that's what it's asking for each one of those. So for the top rail, the knee rail, the foot rail, and then the actual post size. And then once again, I'll go ahead and preview that. And there it is. You can see the railing. Now, the other thing inside of there that we can go through and manipulate, you can kind of play with, is the spacing inside of here. We've set it up where the spacing is a maximum of 50. I want to go through and change that so it's a maximum of 40. So it'll give me additional support. You can also go through and increase, once again, the overall distance from the floor to that foot rail. or to the knee rail or even to the handrail itself. All those things can be done, or even the offset. So that's what those values are inside of there. I am going to increase this one a little bit, make it a little bit higher. Why? Because we can. All right, change that to 30 because it wasn't enough to go through and add another one. Did I change the wrong? Oops, something's not cooperating. Not quite sure what's going on there. Yeah, because I didn't change anything else. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Why that shortened up. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove it. And let's do it again. And once again, I'll do this really quickly, just giving it the references that it needs. Top, front, left, right, and then the floor. Once again, top for each one of these, just for speed. And I'll go ahead and complete that. I know it's going to create it. All right, so that one's there. I'm going to go in and add another one on this side. So I'm going to go ahead next again. I'm going to go in and give it the same thing. So the top, the front, the left, the right, and then the floor. And same size for everything. And there's that. All right, so one of the things that's in there for the offset is, of course, the distance that is going to offset from the end of the pole there. But as you can see with these two, they are intersecting each other. So if I did want to go through and change any of those, I can come over and simply do a modify, select on it, and it allows me to go through and change those values again. If I decide I didn't want any of those, then I can come over here and do a delete. So I can go in and select delete and then pick any of the elements that I want to go through and delete. It will delete this whole thing. But for what we want to do, we don't want to reduce them. We just basically want to go in and create a joint between them. So I'm going to go into my joints, and I'm going to go in and do my miters, and I'm going to create a miter joint between those two rails, like so. And there we have it. All right, so one last thing I want to do, actually two really quickly. And one of them is going back to the ladder. Once again, we're kind of referring to safety. So I'm going to go into my new equipment. I'm going to go back over here to the ladders. And this time I'm going to go in and put the cage on. For this one, it just simply wants to know where the ladder is. So I'm going to come over and simply pick on a ladder. And now we simply want to go through and tell it the size. So it wants to know, basically the important piece is this height. So from the floor to the bottom of the ladder, I'm sorry, to the cage, what's that distance? Currently 80. We can go through and change the spacing to get more or fewer horizontal rings in there. I'll just leave everything as a default, and it goes in and it puts that in there. And once again, depending on the size that we go through and specify, we'll go through and update. And we're talking the actual beam size, as well as, I'm sorry, the ring size, and then the beam sizes. So depending on how sturdy you want it to be, we can go through and do that as well. And then the last one I want to do, and then I'll be finished with the demonstration, is even with these steps, they can also be a little bit hazardous. So we're going to go in and put a rail on the steps. So I'm going to put them on this side just because. So once again, it wants to know the top. So the top is going to be this top face here. It wants to know the front. The front is there. Then it wants to know the left and the right. So the left is going to be this surface here. The right is going to be this surface here. Then it wants to know the floor. Now the floor is going to determine the orientation of this. So I'm going to go ahead and use this datum plane as the floor. And then once again, I'm going to go through and use just the top level items for it. Turn off my datum planes first. And now preview it. And now you can see that it goes in and puts in the rail that is appropriate with the actual stairs. So it goes in and puts it at the angle of the stairs. And you can see that the actual rails themselves, or the poles that hold the actual rail, are basically vertical, because that once again is determining based on the floor. If I pick this as the floor, then the rails will come out perpendicular to that. But because I picked the datum plane as a floor, then they're vertical. So once again, what you pick as that reference will change its orientation. And at any point in time, you can come back into references and reselect them as well. So that way you can see if I do pick this and I do a preview. And now it completely changes the orientation of that rail. All right, so once again, these are just a few of the elements that can be used inside the advanced framework extension inside of Creo. So at this point, I will field any questions. There have been a few that have come in. I'm pretty sure you can add new profiles. I have not. I'm sure there's a library that they're actually associated with that you can actually go through and use. Can you designate a part number from the beginning? There should be the ability to go through and add part numbers as well, at least a part numbering scheme. I don't know if as you're creating them, will it allow you to go through and jump, but I think you can go through and potentially set up what the part number scheme is going to be from the beginning. And can you designate a specific part number? Yeah, that was already X. All right, any additional questions on anything with this? All right, there's no other questions. Then if you do have any additional questions that come up a little bit later, you can contact me at, once again, mwimberly@boundarysys.com, or once again, sales@boundarysys.com, or visit our website at boundarysys.com, or once again, visit our YouTube channel. This will be on our YouTube channel, so within the next couple of days, so you'll be able to go through and access this and review this information as well. Other than that, I'll say thank you. Oh, who was that? Can you briefly discuss implementation with Windchill and the these as common libraries. As far as wind chill, they can be checked in as normal. Library items, I would have to dig into that a little bit deeper as far as pulling out specific library items based on part numbers. Size-wise, I think once you go through and define the size and you designate that item and you check it into wind chill, when you go through and create that, it will go through and recognize that that size already exists, and it should go in and pull that same part number again. I think that's the way it should work within wind chill. I have to investigate it a little bit more. All right, so once again, if you do have any additional questions, please feel free to contact me once again directly through mwimberly@boundarysys.com, or once again, sales-related questions at sales@boundarysys.com, or just visit our website. Once again, thank you for your time and enjoy the remainder of your day.